They never said why they were chasing me. My current understanding of karma is that it is intention-based, always tracking, that I needn't seek out punishment, I needn't punish myself, I should constantly live with a positive intention, which for the most part I feel I had accomplished so far, which is why I was particularly confused about the gaggle of attack helicopters with searchlights and assault rifles not only trained on Francisco but firing indiscriminately at him. Earlier in the day, I had decided to buy a helicopter. I needed to get off the ground. I knew it the whole time, but I didn't feel right spending the money I had found, and I didn't have enough non-magic money to afford a reasonable one. However, the collision with this suicidal or panicked man was a reminder, as dark as some might see it. I feel guilty, yes, but I did everything in my power to turn myself in and to try to help him, but the world showered me with indifference. I had committed an act I was not proud of, but Francisco's life didn't end. His freedom to continue in the world was not to be arbitrarily restricted through self-punishment or guilt. The only reason I was on the ground anyway was I was hesitant to buy a helicopter, and if anything, it was this hesitance to do what I really wanted to do with the opportunities presented that killed this crazed NPC who had exited his car on the highway and ran into oncoming traffic. I was not playing as a pacifist to experience the monotony of real life. My premise was to guide Francisco through this world without attacking or killing players, enjoying everything else this very beautiful game had to offer, and I realized I should aspire to embrace that life to the fullest. Now I had gained $2.5 million, which had literally appeared in front of Francisco. It seemed the ultimate irony that I should find guilt in obtaining money through means considered illegal or against the rules, seeing as I would get several text messages daily from an individual demanding I steal cars or begin a several-step mission to steal a large sum of money. All the traditional sources of income within the GTA world worked from committing dubious acts, so to receive a large sum of stolen money I did not rightfully earn seemed all too fitting for the theme and motifs presented. After I did my research and seeking a helicopter without guns that I might accidentally fire, I chose the helicopter law enforcement agents used, the Maverick. After driving to the landing pad, which was actually very convenient, I immediately felt secure, ready to escape the tethers of gravity and be embryonically shielded from all illegal pedestrian traffic. I activate the engines and move upwards, but I'm unable to direct the helicopter forward, not knowing how to pitch, and while assessing the menu, I was immediately blown up by a heat-seeking RPG. The cost to replace the helicopter was $200. After paying the Pegasus vehicle dealer, the helicopter would be delivered to the nearest airfield, or on top of a hospital in this case. And I must admit at first it was difficult, as several different keys needed to be depressed to fly the helicopter properly. Pitching down while ascending to move forward and heavy banking were all skills I was developing, but one thing was absolutely certain. Getting into the sky was exactly what I had wanted to do. My first goal was to fly to Mount Chiliad, where I made a successful 5.5-point landing and hiked the little way up to the precipice. This time I had $1 and I looked out into the city, and although I had fulfilled my goal of returning to the mountain, the view through the circle was not nearly as spectacular as flying the helicopter over the city. I didn't realize until it was too late that my landing gear had damaged the engine, and after a few mid-air restarts I would get electronic warnings. I hadn't yet read the manual, but I assumed this beeping had some correlation with why the aircraft was so difficult to handle. I headed towards the airport, and after I was told to exit the aircraft while it was falling out of the sky, I ended up crash landing in the swampy marshlands next to the airstrip. As it turns out, I believe it was a military base whose airspace I had violated, which is why I was hunted down and murdered. Whether this was karmic retribution, explicitly being killed in my panicked time of need by people with more regards for rules than life, I'll never know, but I did appreciate the death for this reason, and would likely avoid military bases even in cases of emergency. I was becoming increasingly disappointed with law enforcement. As soon as I had another $200 helicopter, I was watching another player on a tank killing spree, his indicator a deep, mentally unstable red. He was killing wave after wave of policemen and helicopters. I elevated to an altitude where his tank rounds seemed to explode before they reached me, so he gave up on attacking me and focused on the endless troves of police cars that had absolutely no effect on his rampage. The last time I had watched such a thing, the news coverage cut out when the police gave up, but this time I would be able to see what the serial killer did as long as I stayed out of range. It started to be exhausting watching him blow up the same wave of 3 or 4 police cars and 2 police helicopters over and over again. They would never send a stronger force, and the tank seemed pretty impenetrable. I could not think of how to resolve this to satisfy both the ruthless and poorly allocated police gang or the hapless tank man, and the worst part was that I believed the tank man was getting bored. The rampage went on for 10 minutes, and as I watched, I lost count of cars and helicopters. Eventually, he drove into the ocean, and after blowing up a boat or 2, I believe he drowned. It was very unrewarding to see this happen. He was back up on his feet moments later, the police departed, and he so many points richer. I landed the helicopter and looked for any remnants of conflict as I forced Francisco into an early morning swim. Failing that, I visited several landmarks, practicing landing and takeoff at the observatory and the Maze Bank Tower. As I was joy flying over the city, I encountered a police shootout. 2 men were in the hills getting fired upon. I had witnessed enough trades of bullets as of recent. I was surrounded by death, and although life was losing its significance, these individuals displayed their humanity by firing flares into the sky. Even the flight school dropout I knew the universal sign of distress and went down to pick them up. The police would abandon their foot chase, and one of the men would thank me. I told them I could not advocate violence, and one jumped out of the helicopter parachuting to wherever, and the other I dropped off at his requested destination of the tallest building in Los Santos. I didn't trust the police to do the right thing in this world. They would follow their rules, of course, but it seemed their job was mostly to murder anyone who stepped out of line. I had lost most of my faith in the public servants. The firemen who would run past fires or extinguish already extinguished fires. I had been attacked by a platoon of policemen for having a failed aircraft engine and ignored when I needed an ambulance. In effect, their associations with actual public servants had dissolved. They were basically violence causers of a different sort, antagonists as much as anyone else. It may or may not have been the ethically right thing to do, but I had stopped people from shooting at each other for a few minutes, using the resources I had at my disposal. For the first time, I felt like I was actually pushing back, that I could actually engage in peaceful endeavors rather than just be trying to exhibit positivity. And after it was all over, and I was safely on this island, I have to admit, I was looking forward to the opportunity to help someone else.